All right, hello and welcome to another episode of the Common Man's Take on Sports with Kevin and
Quentin.
all right, today we want to talk a little bit about the college football week 4. We already talked about the results of the games, but we want to dive a little deeper and kind of revisit some of our projections in our first episode of the way we thought it would unfold. We are now in week 4, so we're almost halfway through the season. And we want to take a look at kind of where everything stands. So, before we get there, I want to talk about a couple of games here in specifically. So, the Colorado Oregon game, we talked about that a little bit in depth, and the difference was the defense that Oregon brought to the table. But I believe that Colorado's next game is against USC. Is that right, Quentin?
Yes, it is against USC.
So, I knew that once Colorado faced a team that played really good defense, they were going to struggle a bit. And so, again, I definitely think that Shedeur Sanders is for sure a draft pick. He looks like a good quarterback. I think that regardless, he will make it to the NFL level. I think he's a good athlete. I think obviously he comes from good. He's got his dad who can help him with all that. But their biggest problem is their offensive and defensive line. They just don't on the offense. They could not protect him, and on defense they just couldn't get any pressure on Bo Nix. Bo Nix had all day to do whatever he wanted. So it doesn't matter whether you have a good secondary or not. If you can't pressure the quarterback and you give him all day back there to pick you apart, any quarterback will pick you apart. So there's going to be games that they're going to win because their offensive line and defensive line will do just enough. I think their next game against USC, they have an opportunity to do that because USC's defense is definitely not on the level of Oregon's. They just played Arizona State, and if I'm not mistaken, they gave up 28 points to Arizona State. Is that right, Quentin?
Yes, 28 points.
So I think that the USC Colorado game could turn out to be a really good game next week. I think that that could be another game where Colorado could maybe possibly outscore USC. We'll see what happens, but I don't think that it's going to be the same result as the Oregon game because I just don't think that USC's defense is as good as the Oregon defense. So I think that if we go back and look at Colorado's schedule, I think that Colorado has the opportunity to definitely have a winning record this year. I think that they can definitely get at least 6 or 7 wins, possibly 8. I think they can beat Stanford, who's on their schedule. I think they got a good chance to beat Arizona State, who's on their schedule. They got a good chance of beating UCLA. Oregon State will be an interesting matchup for them, but I believe they have a chance to win that game. I believe they have a chance to beat Arizona. Washington State will be an interesting matchup for them because Washington State's a pretty good team, and I just don't think Utah has the same type of defense as Oregon. I just think that Utah, the defense, will overwhelm them again. But there's definitely some winnable games left on that schedule for them to end the year with a winning record. I think that Dion definitely has some work in front of him if he stays there. But I just don't think that they're there this year. There's a lot of hype behind them, but the hype was just because of Deion Sanders, and they were beating teams that they should have beat. You have anything for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think that the USC Colorado game will be a good one because both teams have no defense. So I think there's going to be a lot of points racked up. I do see a 9, 10. I do see a 9, 10 win season for Colorado right now. I don't see them being in don't see them being in top 5. I just see them being in the top 10 by the end of the season right now. Yeah, I mean, they do need to work on their offensive line. I gotta agree with you on this one. They really need to work because they could not protect Shedeur Sanders against Oregon. I think they probably will be able to protect Shedeur Sanders against USC because USC's defense is usually kind of bad. I do think that's going to be a good matchup right there. Utah's defense, I got to agree with you. It's the same as Oregon's defense. It's pretty much the same thing. So they're probably going to lose to Utah because Utah's probably going to have their starting quarterback back by then. I do see a 9-10 win season right here.
So let's talk a little bit about Michigan right now, the number 2 team in the country, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of down on them. I saw some analysts today talking about maybe they shouldn't be the number 2 team in the country. They didn't look good against Rutgers. Let me just throw this out there. Last year, Michigan also struggled in that Rutgers game. And the year before that, they struggled in that Rutgers game. If I'm not mistaken, when they had Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo on that defense and Cade McNamara as a quarterback, they barely beat Rutgers like 20-13 was the final score. And then last year, going in a half, I think Rutgers was actually leading.
Yeah, 17-14, I think.
Something of that nature. And then Michigan came out and just, bludgeoned them to death in the second half. And the same thing happened this year. Like, Michigan's not a team. The way that Michigan plays, they're never going to run the score up on anybody. So they're never going to get style points. That's not who they are. They're going to bludgeon you to death. They're going to chew up the clock. And they're going to wear you out and wear you down. That's who they are. If the analysts at ESPN and Fox and CBS are looking for Michigan to just get them style points and bury people in points, 60 to 10, 70 to 10, you're looking in the wrong direction, man. That's not who Michigan is. That's not what they do. They don't sling the ball all over the field for 500 yards. That's just not them. So they're not going to rack up a ton of points because they like to run the ball. They're going to run the ball, and run the ball again. That's who they are. So I don't necessarily think they should have dropped. They didn't in either ranking. They're still number 2, but a lot of analysts are down on them. Like, if you don't know who Michigan is by now under Jim Harbaugh, then you've just been living under a rock because that's just not who he is. They don't run up the score. They're not pretty. They play the games and they wear you down. That's what they do. That's what they've done. The last 3 years they've struggled with Rutgers, or the last 2 years they've struggled with Rutgers, and they've ended up running the table and stomping a mud hole in Ohio State at the end of the year. So for all you guys out there going, oh my gosh, I don't know, man, this is business as usual for them. It just is. They're going to get better as the season goes along, like they always do. Right now, until somebody beats them, I'm sorry, but that's just who they are, and that I'm not worried. That's just what they do.
Yeah, I mean, you should know by now. Last year, they showed that they were a second half team. This year, they're a second half team.
I don't know about the second half team. That's just the way they play. But go ahead.
You should know by now that they start off slow, and then
that is true.
Your hopes are down in the second half. Because you're not going to expect Michigan to rack up 56 points in a game. You're not going to expect them to rack up 35 points in just the first half.
That's just not who they are, not the game they play. Not at all. So right now, I still think they're playing like the number 2 team in the country. I don't have any concerns with them so far. They play Nebraska next week. at Nebraska. We'll see what happens there. Florida State and Clemson. Let's unpack that a little bit. So I picked Clemson to be back in the playoff this year. Obviously, that's not happened because now they have 2 losses.
Yeah, and they're now unranked. So this is.
Yep. So the matchup that I'm looking to now is Duke and Florida State when they play on October the 21st. Because right now, Duke looks good. They are manhandling everybody. They manhandled Clemson. So right now, Duke could be the dark horse to make the playoff this year. If they run the table, they'd have a win against Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and they play Florida at the end of the season, which I don't know if that's going to be a ranked game or not, but like they're going to have a very strong resume. No, that's Florida State. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong schedule. That'd be Florida State. Florida State beat Duke. They play Miami in Florida. Duke. If they can beat Florida State, so Duke has to play Notre Dame next weekend. If they can beat Notre Dame and then turn around and beat Florida State on October the 21st, so the Duke Notre Dame game I'm definitely watching next weekend. That's going to be a good one, I think, because Duke's defense they're playing great right now. If they can manage to beat Notre Dame, beat Florida State, beat North Carolina, they would have several ranked wins, and if they could win the ACC, they could be a dark horse to get in the play. That could be the TCU or the Cincinnati this year that nobody saw coming.
Yeah. No, Duke's defense just completely stopped Clemson. Duke's defense, gosh, they only held Clemson to 1 touchdown. Now that Florida State Duke game is going to be a good one. Both offenses really good. Florida State's defense is okay. Florida State's defense is good. Duke's defense is good. It's 2 great teams going against each other. That's going to be a good one. Right now, Duke could stop Florida State's Cinderella season. There are Duke, Miami, and maybe Florida who could stop Florida State from getting a Cinderella season. There are 3 teams in that schedule that could stop.
Moving on, Alabama, I think, has a quarterback problem. I don't know if they'll solve it this year or not. We'll see what happens. They struggled against Ole Miss, but they finally pulled away, winning 24-10. I just right now, Alabama, I just don't know. For the first time in a very long time, I just don't know. They're hard to gauge right now because their offense just seems to struggle day, night, every week. And it doesn't seem like it's getting any better right now.
Yeah, they have a good QB, but the reason they have a quarterback problem is because these quarterbacks aren't good. First off, Tyler Buckner couldn't even get a touchdown for Alabama. And Jalen Milroe, he's a good QB. He just needs to read defenses. He just needs to read those defenses because he got 1 pick against Ole Miss and 2 picks against Texas. He couldn't read the defense against Texas, and now he can't read the defense against Ole Miss. That's what's giving them problems right there. That may be one of the reasons why they benched him.
It's possible. We get to Georgia. Georgia's still rolling. Texas is still rolling. There's 2 other games I want to talk about here. Just kind of dive a little deeper. So one is the Ohio State Notre Dame game. So I will say that ever since Ryan Day has taken over Ohio State, they've seemed soft. Anytime that a team could punch them in the mouth and be extremely physical with them, they seem to quit.
Yeah, like the last 2 years with Michigan, when in 2021 Michigan punched them in the mouth, they quit.
So here's what I will say about the Ohio State Notre Dame game. It seemed like it was going in that direction. Like Notre Dame had their number, they punched in my mouth, they were extremely physical with them, and Ohio State players were quitting. But then I watched that whole game, and I watched that last drive, and I know everybody's talking about Notre Dame only having 10 men on the field on defense for that last drive, but to be honest, that last touchdown, but to be honest, to get to that 1 yard line, Ohio State, Kyle McCord looked good. I am for anybody who knows me, my friends, I am an Ohio State hater, but I will say that Kyle McCord really stepped up against that Notre Dame defense to move that ball down that last drive. That was almost flawless for him. He did exactly what he needed to do to get them down there where they had an opportunity to win the game. And it was with like a minute. I have to go back and look at the game. I think he had like a minute and a half or 2 minutes left, and he ran a 2-minute drill exactly the way you were supposed to. And so, what I will say to Michigan is those last 2 years where the physicality phased Ohio State, it might be a little tougher to win that game this year because Ohio State looks like they may have gotten a little toughness to them. We'll see as the year goes along. But I know Notre Dame's a different animal from Michigan. But, man, that just seems like Ohio State does seem like they got a little tougher from that Notre Dame game.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. Kyle McCord.
It pains me to say that, but I think they did.
Yeah, Kyle McCord, he really, he had a great game against Notre Dame. Even with that tough defense, he still had a great game. If I could check the stats. He was 21 of 37. He threw for 240 yards against the Notre Dame defense. That's pretty good for a quarterback against this tough Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, no, I agree. He didn't throw a touchdown, but he didn't have to. Travion Henderson ran for one, and Mr. Trainum ran for the other, the last touchdown of the game. And then they kicked that field goal. So they won 17-14. Notre Dame, Ohio State was leading. Notre Dame came back and took the lead, but Notre Dame just couldn't hang on to the lead. Their defense failed them on that last drive. They did look a little tired, but it's not here nor there. I have to give credit where credit is due. Ohio State really stepped up and they won that game. So I will say that that drive at the end of the game did impress me, and they looked good. They looked good. Notre Dame's got a tough defense, so I didn't expect it to be a high scoring game. But we'll see what happens going forward because obviously Ohio State has to play Penn State and Michigan, both very very tough defenses. Which brings me to the next game I want to talk about, the Penn State Ohio. The Penn State Iowa game. I was thinking about Penn State Ohio State. I was just talking about the Penn State Iowa game. So that was a defensive struggle at first, but the difference in that game is the difference that I thought it would be. It was offense. Penn State has offense. Iowa does not, and Penn State completely shut Iowa out, 31-0, and Penn State showed some real grit in that game. At the half, it was only 10-0 in favor of Penn State. Again, it was a defensive struggle for most of the way. But then Penn State scored 14 in the third, and then another 7 in the fourth to make it 31-0, and they completely blanked Iowa. And that's how good that Penn State defense is. Penn State's a force to be reckoned with this year. That's going to be a tough go around because Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State all have to play each other. And so this is shaping up to look like that 2016 season where they all turned out to be good and they all beat each other, and Penn State got into the Big Ten Championship by default because of the way that it worked. So it could be a really tough race between. It could be a 3-team race between those 3 teams because they all look like they have a tough defense and tough offense. They can grind it out. So they looked good to me.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. The one thing that Iowa didn't have was offense. Cade McNamara just when you're coming after McNamara, he's either gonna do you're either gonna get him or he's either gonna make a bad play. Cause he's not athletic like JJ McCarthy. He can't use his legs if he needs to like JJ McCarthy.
No, he's not athletic like Kyle McCord. When he needed to run, he could. Who's the quarterback for Georgia?
Carson Beck.
Yep, Beck. Carson Beck. When he needs to run, he can. He has a little bit of athletic ability. J.J. McCarthy, Quinn Ewers, all those guys. Jordan Travis. All those guys. If they need to run, Caleb Williams. Bo Nix. All those guys, if they need to run, they can. They don't have to, but they can. And so that's what separates, the quarterbacks that are on another level from guys like Cade McNamara, who's just an average quarterback who will usually not turn the ball over, and protect the ball. But, at some point that athleticism becomes a hindrance if you don't have it. Like Penn State, they were all over Cade McNamara that game. He barely had any room to breathe. And when you're all over him like that, he just does not have the ability to extend plays like those other quarterbacks do. And so that's the biggest difference. Michael Penix Jr. for Washington, another one. He has the athletic ability to extend plays. And that's what makes him so good. That's another team I want to talk. Washington is rolling right now. They look really good too in the Pac. Like the Pac-12 is going to be tough. There's a lot of teams look really good over there. It's been a long time since the Pac-12 looked tough like that. They look really tough this year. I think the Pac-12 has a great opportunity to get a team back in the playoff.
Yeah, like maybe Utah or Oregon, Washington. There's lots of teams. USC maybe.
So let's look at the AP Top 25 poll that was released today. You have Georgia number 1, Michigan 2, Texas at number 3. Ohio State moved back up to number 4. Florida State dropped 1, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't know why they put Ohio State over Florida State. Not sure about that one, but I'll just go with it for now because they moved Ohio State up 2 spots, dropped Florida State 1, moved Penn State up 1 to number 6. Washington moved up 1 to number 7. USC dropped 3 spots, which they didn't lose, but fair enough, I guess. Oregon moved up a spot. Utah moved up a spot, which I'm okay with all of those. Notre Dame dropped 2 spots, which is fine because it's not like they lost to a nobody. Like they lost to a top 5 team or top 6 team in Ohio State. Alabama's at number 12, but they moved up 1 spot, but I don't agree with that. I think LSU should be over Alabama. Alabama moved up 1, LSU dropped 1. I don't agree with that, but whatever. It is what it is. But let's revisit our projections. So my projection at the beginning of the year was that Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, and Clemson would get into the playoffs. Obviously, my Clemson pick is out the window because they have 2 losses. There's no way they get in the playoff now with 2 losses. So Georgia and Michigan, I still feel confident will make the playoff. If the Big Ten plays out like it did last year, and OSU's only losses to Michigan, then I think I think Ohio State gets in the playoff. The fourth team I think will either be Duke from the ACC. That's just based off everything up to week 4, or it'll be somebody from the Pac-12. And right now, the Pac-12, I'm looking at Oregon or Washington are my 2 teams that I think will come. One of those 2, so it'll either be Duke or Washington or Oregon out of the Pac-12. That's my adjustment to my preseason picks right now, just off 4 weeks. Those are the teams that look really hot right now and are just continuing to roll through their schedules. So what do you think?
Well, number 1, Georgia. I do agree with that one. Michigan is number 2. I gotta agree with that one as well. 3, Texas. Yep. 4, Ohio State. Don't understand that one. I'm not really happy with that one. But it is what it is. Florida State, number 5. I don't like them dropping down one. I don't think they deserved it, but Penn State moved up one. Washington moved up one. USC moved 3 down. I don't really agree with that one right there. USC moving 3 down. I feel like they should have stayed where they were, and it would have been all fun. Number 9, Oregon. Yeah. 10, Utah. I gotta agree with that. Notre Dame. They went down to number 11. I agree with that. 12, Alabama, and 13, LSU. I don't agree with that one. It's kind of because how Alabama performed.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't agree with that one. Why Alabama is number 12 and LSU dropped one. It's not like LSU lost. Oklahoma, number 14.
You don't have to go past the top 10.
Okay with that. I'm just gonna stop at UNC. UNC, number 15. I'm okay with that.
Yep. The only other team right now that I think could be a fourth team to get in would be Texas. Texas does look good right now. They look like the front runner to win the Big 12. So if Texas wins the Big 12, there could be some. A one-loss team out of the Big 10 or SEC may not get in this year just because the Pac-12 and the Big 12, you're looking at Texas and either Oregon or Washington could come out of there undefeated, and so that would be interesting. You could have 4 undefeated teams in the top 4, so we'll see how that plays out. I will say that I have to admit Texas looks good thus far. They are a real threat to make the playoff this year. Texas is rolling. They're definitely rolling.
Yeah, so when we first started this, I had number 1 Michigan, 2 LSU, 3 Clemson, 4 Georgia. And Clemson's out of the window. LSU right now is a maybe. They can keep winning games, then they're probably going to be in the top 4. And I'm going to change Clemson for Texas, and then for my number. And then, let's see. Then I'm going to put Georgia back to number 1, put Michigan back to number 2. I want LSU right now at number 5. And then to replace LSU, I would put Washington in there. So mine are so number 1 Georgia, number 2 Michigan, number 3 is Texas, and number 4 Washington.
Okay, not bad picks right now because all those 4 teams are rolling. So not bad picks. Let's take a quick look here at the MLB standings currently for the playoffs. We haven't done that in a couple episodes. So there's a few games played today, but right now Baltimore's locked in. Tampa Bay's locked in, but Baltimore's going to run that division just because they now have a 2-game lead. They're 97 and 59, and Tampa Bay is 95 and 62. So Tampa Bay's still locked into the wild card for sure because nobody's close to them. You got Toronto in the wild card of the American League at 87 and 69, and Houston is in at 85 and 71. The only team close enough to bump Houston would be Seattle at 84 and 71. There is a week left of games. a week and a couple of days or a week and a half, something of that nature. So there's not much time left. So it's coming down to the last, few games to see who gets in. Seattle's still right there, so they could bump Houston if they continue to win. They're really close. So we'll see what happens with the American League. But right now it looks like Baltimore, Texas, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, and Toronto are all in right now. Houston is the only question mark left, and it's between them and Seattle. So we'll see how that comes down for the final week. You have National League, Atlanta, 99 and 56. They're locked in. The Dodgers are locked in at 95 and 69, and Milwaukee is locked in at 88 and 68. I believe they've clinched their division. So all three of those teams are in. Philadelphia is in right now at 86 and 69. The Diamondbacks are 82 and 73. The Cubs are 82 and 74. And the Marlins are right on them at 81 and 75. So the Cubs are still not safe. You got the Marlins right there, and the Marlins won again today. So so did the Cubs. So the Marlins are still there. The Marlins are 6-4 in their last 10. They're on a 2-game win streak, and the Cubs are 4-6, and they've won 3 in a row. So we'll see how that ends out. Cincinnati's still kind of right in there at 80 and 77, but Miami's the one that, if the Cubs trip up, the Marlins could bump them out of that wild card. So that's still a pretty close race between the Diamondbacks, the Cubs, the Marlins. We'll see how that plays out. I did read something the other day where if it comes down to a tiebreaker, the Marlins own the tiebreaker over the Cubs. The Diamondbacks own a tiebreaker over the Cubs. And the Giants also own a tiebreaker over the Cubs. So if any of those teams are tied with the Cubs automatically get bumped out of the wild card because all those teams own the tiebreaker over them. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know that until I read that the other day. So Miami very well could bump the Cubs out of the wild card. We'll see how that plays out. But right now, that is what your wild card looks like. It's kind of what we expected. The only one that won't make it that I thought had a shot was the Reds. But the Reds are probably not going to make the playoffs. So we'll see if the Cubs can or not.
Yeah,
it's close.
Yeah. Right now, it's looking like the Reds are right now done.
Yeah, they're 80 and 77. They're still right in there.
They're only 2.5 games back, so.
I'd have to look, but I believe the Reds also own the tiebreaker over the Cubs. Yes, sir.
Are you serious?
So if they tie, I think the Reds own the tiebreaker there.
Are you serious?
I have to go back and read that article. I know the Marlins do, and I know the Diamondbacks do. I'm not sure about the Reds, but I have to look. I was positive that article I read said that everybody who's in the fight for that right now owns a tiebreaker over the Cubs.
Why?
That's right. You didn't know that, did you? So it's not done yet, sir. We'll see how that shakes out. But, yeah, it's still a 4-team race right now for that last 2 wild card spots in the National League. Diamondbacks, the Cubs, the Marlins, and the Reds are all kind of still in there. The Reds are a little bit further back, but still well within, it's a week's worth of games, week and a half. 2.5 games is nothing in a week and a half worth of games. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
But that'll do it for our show for today, unless you have something else you want to talk about.
No, nothing else.
All right. Don't forget, guys, we have a YouTube channel called The Common Man's Take on Sports. For your friends who don't like to watch or listen to podcasts, please encourage them to check out our YouTube channel. We also have a Facebook page, first name Kevin, last name Quentin, that we use for The Common Man's Take on Sports. We post our episodes there, and then you can get to us on any platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, uh, Bloomberg, Samsung, iHeartRadio, FM. We're in all those places. But you can also go to our webpage, kmisom@podbean.com, and you can access all of you can access our Facebook page and our YouTube page, and you can also access our podcast from there as well. So, yeah, we have lots of options for you guys to listen to us. Also, if you want to leave us a comment on our Facebook page or our home page and let us know there's something you'd like for us to talk about, you can go ahead and go over there and do that. But that's it for today. We thank you for listening. We hope you come back and continue to listen. Remember, if you subscribe or if you listen to us on any of those platforms, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and you'll leave us a rating and let us know how we're doing. That's it for today. Thank you for listening.